This is profound. Trying to figure out how big of a world analytics was going to get and data was going to become. How big data was going to get is really something no one had thought of. And ingesting that data and processing that data was very, very daunting. And this is where event hubs come into the picture. Azure Event Hubs are a big data streaming platform that essentially ingest events that are coming in. You think to yourself, well, how many events can there be, and where are these events coming from? Look at it this way. Think about your IoTs, your Internet of Things devices. They are producing events by the second. Every second of every minute of every hour of every day, events are being produced. What about your car? What about your logs? If you don't want to think about cars and IoTs, think about logs that are existing on your systems. These logs are being added to and manipulated all the time. What if you want to evaluate those logs in real time so that you can determine, well, perhaps anomalies? And you want to figure out what your application is doing. You want to be able to ingest that data so that you can process it. And it's not that easy, not as easy as it sounds. Let's say I want to process logs for a database, or I want to do it for archiving of my data, or I want to do live dashboarding. You know what I mean by live dashboarding? I want to find out what's happening as it's happening. Your logs that are going onto your systems, that are going onto your drives, you're not going to look at those logs individually, are you? Those millions upon millions of logs that are going in from your database servers, your web servers, your mail servers, essentially your transactional environment. If you want to process those logs in real time, see this transaction processing, you really need Event Hub to do the work for you. And anything that has to do with telemetry processing, whether it's user or devices, extremely, extremely powerful. You're talking about millions of logs and millions of log items per second. There are some key architectural components of Azure Event Hub that I want to tell you about. So there are event producers. This is what sends data to the Event Hub, and publishers can publish event utilizing HTTPS or the Advanced Message Queue Protocol or Apache Kafka. There are partitions. Each consumer only reads a specific subset or partition of the message stream. Then there are consumer groups. A view, which is a state, a position, or an offset of an entire event hub. Consumer groups enable consuming applications to each have a separate view of the event stream. They read the stream independently at their own pace and with their own offsets. Throughput units and processing units. These are pre-purchased units of capacity that control the throughput capacity of event hubs. Finally, event receivers. This is any entity that reads event data from an event hub. And all event hubs consumers connect via the AMQP 1.0 session. The event hub service delivers events through session as they become available. All Kafka consumers connect via the Kafka protocol. So, event producers, partitions, consumer groups, and event receivers. And don't forget the throughput units and the processing units. These are the capacity. These are units of capacity that are used to control the throughput of the Event Hub. So take a look at this. You have your data sources, whether they are from SQL or change data capture, whether they are IoT resources or on-prem databases or some enterprise apps, really doesn't matter. You can bring them all into Event Hubs. And Event Hub can do, for example, pass it along, because once the data is captured, isn't that the big thing? Capturing this data in real time that is coming in perhaps in millions of rows or millions of transactions very rapidly. Event Hub can capture that data, and once it's capturing or as it's capturing that data, perhaps in real time, you can take it through a pre-processing and staging area, however you want to do that on your end, and then load it, perhaps utilizing an ETL process and put it in our data warehouse, and then you can use something like Power BI to visualize it. So this is one example of where Event Hub can come into the picture. Event Hub, again, is a big data streaming platform and event ingestion service. It is definitely platform as a service. Since we are on the topic of events, let's talk about event grids. This is an event delivery service at massive scale. How long are you waiting for your event to be delivered where it is needed most? I'm going to give you an example here. Here is a serverless application architecture in the cloud and Event Grid being utilized for this purpose. In this particular instance, it is being used, Event Grid is being used to connect a serverless application function to do image analysis. Let's say images are being received by some application very frequently, and each time a new photo is received, the Event Grid can kick off a function, an Azure function, to determine where the photo belongs. And perhaps it adds that photo to a Azure blob. Event delivery, reliable event delivery at massive scale. What if you want to do ops processing and ops automation? You can use Event Grid for that purpose as well. Let's say you want to notify some kind of an automation process each time a new VM is created. So you create a VM off of a machine, you let the grid handle that event, that machine creation has been completed, or maybe that a SQL Server database has been spun up, or whatever the case may be, you're trying to automate operations. And maybe you can check to see if these configurations are compliant, maybe put metadata into operations tools, maybe tag virtual machines or file work items, whatever the case may be, but you're doing it reliably and very rapidly. So this is another example of why you would want to use Event Grid for ops automation. So we use Event Grid for image processing, for ops automation. You can also use it, for example, for application integration. You can use it to connect your data, well, your applications, if you will, with other services. Here is giving an example of connecting, for example, an Excel application, perhaps with individual text files and something coming off of a report. You can use Event Grid for that purpose, kicking off a Azure function and then letting Event Grid process that data or send that data where it needs to. This is very important and very reliable. You don't want to wait for an event to be triggered or be sent where it needs to be, and that time that you would have to wait for consumption would take too long. These types of integrations and processing and such need to happen in real time or absolutely near real time. Event Grid can make that happen. As we deal with massive amounts of data, and we're talking about massive amounts of data, push notifications is one of those entities. If you really wanted to send out breaking news, you want to send out perhaps location-based coupons, you want to send notifications to users about games, about sports, about finance, you want to send promotional material, maybe emergency information, maybe you want to notify new messages or work items or something that's been completed, or multi-factor authentication. How many times have you received a code on your phone letting you know that you need to enter this code to allow for authentication to take place? That would be an example of what the Azure Notification Hub would do. Why would you use one? Well, you want to eliminate the complexity associated with push notifications. Whether you're sending it off to Android or iOS, imagine sending or having to send millions of these notifications across all over the nation or the world. It simplifies your backend, so you don't have to do all of the heavy lifting. You retrieve a push notification handle, you register that handle, you send the notification, and that's kind of it. Notification Hub takes care of the rest. So long as you register with the push notification service, you're all kind of done. So that's the Azure Notification Hub.